my name is Oluwatufumi Anaike, but you can call me Toff. And welcome back to my channel. Today I just quickly want to say I'm actually repping Newcastle University, as this is the Newcastle University Scrapbooking Society logo, if you can't tell by the scissors and the buttons. But yeah, so anyway, let's get into the video. So this topic today was picked by a viewer, MJo. Thank you so much for recommending this idea, but they asked to go over in a video applying for graduate schemes. So this video will be really helpful for anyone that's looking for graduate schemes, whether you just graduated, whether you're in third year, fourth year, or you're a master's student. I also want to give a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not a recruiter. I'm clearly not part of the careers service. This is more information I've gleaned and collated from my years of working, my past 5 years of working and applying for different jobs, and now from getting a graduate scheme job. So this is my little twist on things, but I would also say do lots of research. There's lots of great resources out there, and this one video shouldn't be your only source for all things graduate jobs. But let's get into it. So I really want to start this with things that nobody tells you, or things that nobody told me. Things that I've picked up through my older brother, my younger sister who's at university now, and through the undergrads that I've met at Newcastle University. So I remember when I was at university, what people always used to say to me was that your first year of university didn't count. Looking back, I kind of feel like that's people that didn't do as great as they would have liked to in first year, sort of placating themselves rather than giving me good advice. Your first year definitely does count. In a lot of universities, it doesn't count towards your end grade. So for me, the split was something like 25% of your final grade was your second year, and like 75% of your final grade was your third year, with your first year contributing 0%. So in grades wise, it doesn't count. But your first year is so important when it comes to getting jobs. Why? Because you can get internships, you can get spring weeks. Your A-levels and your grades in first year can really reflect to an employer who's the best for their spring weeks. Once you're on these spring weeks with like Deutsche, LSEG, a lot of the bigger graduate schemes, they then tend to use this final list, this spring week list. They tend to take people from this and put them into summer internships. So that's not to say that if you haven't done a spring week, you can't get a summer internship. That's not true. There will always be exceptions. But I know from my sister doing spring weeks and being offered summer internships that often this is the case, because they get to know you over the spring week. They get to see if your attitude is right for the company. And then why would they then go and get someone else who might be a bit more of a wild card? They already know you and they know that they like you. So anyone that tells you first year doesn't count, it does. Some spring weeks, some summer internships will cut you off if you don't have the right grades. And honestly, a summer internship is such a step into a good new job. So for me, I didn't do a spring week or a summer internship at a really big firm, but I still did summer internships. I did internships over my second year of university, and I ended up working for that company once I graduated. So I think a lot of people don't want to bother others in terms of helping them to get a job. But I mean, you should bother them. Like, it's your future, it's your future jobs. The more relevant work experience you have, the better of a candidate you'll be. So if you know someone in a certain field, ask them to hand your CV along. Ask them if you can do work experience with them. Even if it's just a day is better than nothing. And especially when it comes down to applying for, let's say, consulting. A lot of companies want to wean out those people that are just coming into consulting for the money. If you can say, oh no, I've been a consultant, even if it's for a week, they know that you actually kind of know you want to do this. And it gives you a better chance of getting a job than someone that's just carefree, skipping into the interview, never having known if they really do want to do a specific job before. So work experience, work experience, work experience. However, if you're in your third year, fourth year masters and you're about to graduate and you haven't done work experience, there are other things that you can use to kind of fill this gap. So I would say high-level sports. Really, you want to show commitment, you want to show hard work, you want to show dedication. So high-level sports shows that. It shows that you can get to training on time. especially if you perform well at the sport. If you've got another role in the sport, like captain, really talk about that on your CV. What part-time jobs can also fit into this role. If you manage to work a part-time job and get a good degree, it shows that you're very good at multitasking. Talk about these things, make sure you sell them to an employer. Also, if you have the chance to be on a committee, take it. Much like a part-time job or a sport, it shows that you're flexible, you're adaptable, you can work as a team, and that you can multitask. You can do your course and you can be a committee member of a society. You'll see that you're busy and maybe you didn't have time for work experience, but you still have a lot of the values that they would want from someone that has worked before. The second part I want to talk about is timelines. So for me, I would genuinely recommend you want to be applying your final year. So if you want a big graduate scheme, you want to be applying from September to January. That's the main time they put out their graduate schemes. Like I mentioned in my last video, that's civil service, the big banks, the consulting companies. September to January is more their time when you send in your CVs, and then sort of January, February, March, April, May is when you're doing interviews and you know whether you've got the job or not. I know some people who actually had the time to be applying in September to January and they didn't. And from speaking to them, I think it lowered their morale because they didn't even have anything to distract them from the rejections. At least when I was getting rejected left, right and centre, I could go and study and take my mind off of it sometimes. But if you're doing maybe a part-time job and then you're applying for jobs, it just puts you in a bit of a limbo state. We all know how comparison can be the thief of joy. So if other people have got jobs and they're posting it all over Instagram, it can make you feel bad. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just the situation, comparing it to people who have suddenly got all this money to go on holidays, for example. So I would also say it's better to start applying in the year that you graduate, because if you start applying after you graduated, you're then competing against next year's crop. And I mean, if you can explain it, then definitely take that break. If you're travelling, take that break. I think a lot of people understand that sometimes people want to go travelling before fully settling down to work for the rest of their lives. I think a lot of people understand that. But if you're doing, let's say, a menial job that doesn't relate to your end job, not to say that there's anything wrong with these, but let's say like stacking shelves. Now, there's definitely transferable skills like time management, communication, definitely. And it's a valuable job. We need people to stack shelves. But let's say you want to be an architect. There's no direct skill that you're building that goes towards that end job. So unless you're volunteering or making sure to do projects on your own time, as well as applying, you might actually make yourself look worse as a candidate, as opposed to someone who has their act together and has completely applied in their final year of university. So in this part 3, I want to talk about things that you want to do before you start applying for jobs. So this can be stuff that you're doing over your second year summer. This can be stuff that you want to do sort of in your beginning of your last year. There's a whole lot of information out there about this, where they'll give you some similar advice, but I also want to give my personal experience on some of this advice. Some of it wasn't super helpful. So one of the things that they'll typically say online, they'll say, oh, upload your CV to websites, like job sites, so recruiters can look through your CVs. I'll be really honest with you. It seems to be much more helpful if you've got much more experience. And people just sent me spam, essentially. I was quite clear about what I was looking for. By this time I had done an exam that lent towards the business analysis side, but I was getting job adverts for stocking shelves in Tesco. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. I have done similar jobs before, but it's not what I was looking for. I was looking very clearly for a BA role. Now that I've complained a bit, something that was super helpful for me was signing up to like a notification job page, job website like Target, especially one that specifically has a sort of graduate job information application thing. You know what I mean? They send out newsletters about graduate jobs. These are so helpful. Honestly, this time around, these kind of saved my life. There were applications I didn't know were about to end, And Target collects a lot of that information. I'll link it below, but it often takes the job advert and puts it on their website, gives you links to their website where you can apply, tells you when the closing date, often tells you the degrees that the people are looking for. Target is a whole sort of center point for all these graduate jobs, and if you set up a newsletter, they will email you with jobs that fit what you're looking for, but they'll also email you with graduate jobs and letting you know that they close soon, for example. Target jobs is the way to go, or something very similar. So tailoring your application. So my career service and online and everyone I've spoken to is like, make sure you tailor your CV, make sure you tailor your CV. And I do and I don't agree with them, and I'll explain why. So for me, I have 2 template CVs, and I tweak these for different jobs. So the difference between the 2 CVs is, what if I have a lot of jobs that have relevant experience for the role, I'll have a shorter personal profile that's just a line, but because what I really want to get across to them is my work experience. That's more important than me talking about myself, and that will be on screen. If it's a job where I have less relevant work experience, then I have a paragraph for my personal statement, which tells them a bit about me, tells them about my interests, the stuff that I've been doing at university, and I fill that up a little bit more. I would prefer to have the paragraph of the personal statement in all my CVs, but it's so crucial to keep your CV under 2 pages. So if I feel like I really need the information, then I'll go for the shorter personal statement. So an example of where I did that is I applied for an Amazon job, and I wanted to include that over the summer, after I was made redundant last year, that I worked in the Amazon fulfillment centre, and then I wanted to link my experience back to be like, I've worked at Amazon before, I kind of get the context, I understand how the business works, so they understand that I understand Amazon. So I really wanted to fit that on my CV. Whereas for other jobs, because I was essentially packing boxes, I didn't feel like it was relevant. So I really shortened down that Amazon section to about a line, briefly explaining what I did. Whereas when I went to Amazon, in the cover letter and the CV, I went into a bit more detail, especially in the cover letter, explaining how actually it was a really good job. It taught me about Amazon's innovation, even at the lowest levels of their workers. So as much as I've said that you don't necessarily need to write a whole new CV every time, you do want to update your relevant work experience where possible and make sure your skills apply. So when I say skills, I mean things like driving license, MS Office, the softwares you can use, that kind of thing. So that's the kind you want to tweak those to make sure that you're using the job description words. So if they say they want a leader, you need to explain where you were a leader. So that is tweaking, but it's more adding keywords and making sure your skills that match the job description are used rather than writing a whole new CV. Whereas for cover letter, like I said earlier, this needs to be started from scratch. This is why you need to make sure that you actually want to work at the company, because you need to do some research on the company, find out a bit about their history, find case studies that really interest you, and find if you have a connection to the company somehow. So like I said about Amazon, I spoke about my experience as a fulfillment centre associate. If for other companies, if I'd known people that had worked there and were very professional, I mentioned it. You want to show your personal relationship with the company and let the company know that you actually want to work there. Maybe follow them on LinkedIn, on Twitter, so you can get information that might not be on their main website and shows that you've done a bit of a deep dive and you actually do really like the company. If you do this and you find it really crazily boring, maybe you don't like the company. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be all giggles, but if you really are like, oh, this is so hard, maybe the company isn't for you. So the last thing I want to talk about is, and this is something that should be done either the beginning of your final year when you're starting to apply, or the summer before your final year. You need to sit down and have a conversation with yourself about what you really need or what you really want from a company, what your non-negotiables are. Do you need to work for the Big Four? If yes, again, I'm not judging you, but you need to sit down and say, is this a non-negotiable for me? Will another prestigious consulting company do? Do I want to work for a large company or a smaller company? How much do I need a work-life balance? Am I ready to really hash it out for a few years at a bigger, more competitive company before taking transition and slowing down? Or do I have a flourishing side business, for example? Am I making money on YouTube, for example? And do I want time to focus on that? So you need to ask yourself all these questions about what your future, what you want your future to look like, your future at work, and then you need to discuss what are non-negotiables, because unfortunately we can't get everything. So you need to pick maybe your top 3 or your top 4, and when you start looking for jobs, you want to go through Glassdoor and check if your top 3 or 4 non-negotiables align with what the company and what people are saying about the company. So if you say work-life balance is a must, and everyone's saying on Glassdoor that there's no work-life balance, that company is not for you. So you know you can push it on and keep looking at other companies. So this really helps you weed out applications, so you're not doing too many, but the ones you're doing are the ones you really care about. So the next part I want to talk about is more for computer science students and is CV tips. Skip to the next part if you're not a computer science student. This is a fairly short section. But what I think is key, and what the career service really liked when I showed them my CV, and what the job I got really liked when I showed them my CV, is that I went through and put a bullet point list in of the key modules that reflected what they were asking for on the job. So I had the title of the module, and then I briefly explained what we did in that module while highlighting the bits that are either more impressive or more difficult. So I spoke about sorting algorithms particularly. I specified every single language I used in that module. I explained the end outcome of that module, which was a mini project or a mini piece of development that we had to deliver. If you have electives that might make you stand out, so for example, I know people that have done philosophy courses on computer science degrees. Speak about that. Speak about what makes you different. If you've done something really impressive, like really high level mathematics, obviously put that down. Brag about yourself a bit. But really make sure that you're looking back at the job advert when you're writing this. So if they've asked for someone that knows Python, and you've done a Python project, but all you've spoken about is Java, you might not get the job. But you might not get the job because you've written your CV incorrectly. So the last thing I want to talk about is rejection. I think everyone knows this, but if you haven't applied for jobs, this could be potentially a bit of a shock for you. So I really want to make 2 things clear. First of all, that there's bound to be quite a lot of rejection. Even for the top candidates, they're bound to get rejected a handful of times. And I know from my point of view, when I was applying now, I was a good candidate, but I wasn't a top candidate. And as you can see in my previous video, I got rejected anywhere between 15 and 20 times. And I applied to about 30 different companies. So I was maybe like a third pass rate. And I knew I was like a slightly above average candidate. So I just say, if you're not aware of this, that rejection is coming. But I think the second thing that I need to make the clearest is it's not you. Like, if there's so much information that goes on in the job world, there's so many people that can't get work experience, and that's not a reflection of you as an individual person. I think that's so important to remember. There's so many things through life that if you don't get them, like if you don't get the top job, especially for the competitive among us, if you don't work at the big 4, for example, a lot of people feel like a failure. And I really want to harp on this point and just let you know it's not you. It's just something in your CV. Maybe you'll be better candidate for them later. And I'll be really honest, in my past 5-6 years of working, and like if I want to add on like 3 years to make it 8 years, so like past 8 years, including my university time, I've grown and developed and changed so much. So honestly, some of these big jobs at the big architecture firms, I'm kind of glad I didn't get them, because I would be stuck in a job that I didn't really enjoy that much. So I do want to say your first job is fantastic, but it's not the be all and end all. It's great if you can get straight into the career that you want to, but actually sometimes it's a little bit of character building, honestly. It helps you find out what you want, what you need. It also helps you find out, is this the company for me? It helps you build character. It helps you build resilience. Like, fine, I didn't get it this time, but I can still work my way up to the job that I want, at the company I want, with the salary that I want. So, number 1, I want to say, rejection is coming. Number 2, you'll be okay. Don't forget to talk to people. Don't forget to exercise, to run it out. Don't forget to journal it. Whatever your outlet is, don't forget to let it out, and remember that you are who you are and you're an amazing person, whether you have a 6-figure salary or not. So that's all my tips and advice. I really do hope that that was helpful. Let me know, feedback below. Let me know what kind of videos you want in the future, what kind of topics. Let me know if there's anything from the video that I can clarify. But on the whole, I just wish you the absolute best now that you're on your job hunt. And I would really love it if people could let me know down below the kind of jobs that they got. And if this video helped them get the job, or other resources, share with everyone other resources that you use that you thought was so helpful and helped you get the job. But that being said, I just want to say good luck and all the best. Have a lovely day.